Hi everyone, welcome to Stardust Astrology. I hope you're doing well. And in this video, I would like to talk about Mercury retrograde in transit, but in general. And I'm going to make a separate video on this particular transit that is going to happen in a few days. Start in a few days in the sign of Sagittarius. But this is something general that you will later be able to come back to whenever there is a similar transit, and Mercury goes retrograde 3 to 4 times a year, so this transit actually happens very often. Now, we all know, I guess you know, that the planet doesn't actually move backwards. This is an optical illusion. But then, okay, if we look at it scientifically, this is an optical illusion. But if you look at this event and this transit from a higher perspective, like a more spiritual perspective, which you can do since this transit is going to happen in Sagittarius, the sign that rules this, from a higher perspective, our whole world is an illusion, Maya, right? So no point in analyzing really what happens there. If you would like to know technically what happens, you can find a lot of a lot of websites with explanations on what technically happens when we perceive that Mercury goes retrograde. In reality, what we call Mercury retrograde really is the time period when Mercury is closer to planet Earth, which in astrology represents us and our body and our ascendant, right? So Mercury is closer to the Earth than when it is moving direct, and its energies are stronger. After the moon, Mercury is the fastest moving planet in our solar system, which means that the speed by which Mercury goes around the sun is faster than the speed by which the Earth goes around the sun. So normally when Mercury is direct, the sun is located between the Earth and Mercury. And when Mercury goes retrograde, the sun is from the other side of Mercury. Now we all know that the sun, sorry about that, that the sun is this huge fireball, fiery energy, the largest planet, not even the planet, the star, the only star in our solar system, which has the burning power. And the power of fire is to burn away all the necessary things, all the extra things, and to purify the energy. So when Mercury goes direct, its energies first have to go through the energy of sun, where a lot of them gets burned away. At some level, sun represents our consciousness, our higher consciousness. So a lot of this mercurial energy gets burnt away, right? So before the energy hits us on Earth, it goes through a kind of fiery purification process where parts of it are burned by the fire and heat of sun rays. And when Mercury goes retrograde, and it is located between the Earth and the Sun, it is closer to the Earth, so its influence or its energies hit us directly in their original amount and form, without first going through the fiery purification process of the sun rays. Practically, this means that we get to feel more of this energy of Mercury. The energy of Mercury gets more concentrated. There is no such thing as good on bad on some good or bad on some higher level of perception, right? We tend to label everything that is momentarily unpleasant as bad, and we tend to label everything that is momentarily pleasant as good. No, I don't really want to get tangled up in such kind of explanations. Mercury retrograde is not bad. More is the key word here. You get more of its energy, and it is kind of unprocessed raw energy as well. So how do you handle it in this quality and quantity? This is the key question with Mercury retrograde. Why do we get let's say nervous and hectic with this energy? Well, it's because Mercury is also connected to our nervous system, and when there is no purification of its energies, you get more of this concentrated, unprocessed nervous energies. Okay, Mercury direct is similar to the third house, and it rules our logical mind. Any kind of information and data that you deal with in your everyday life, which is a huge part of, well, everything that we deal with in our everything everyday lives. It rules communication processes, facts. The key thing about Mercury is facts. Mercury just wants to know facts, information, details as well. Transportation, movement, short trips, learning processes, negotiations, meetings, skills that we learn, management, planning, neighbors, teammates. Now, all these things are related to the third house energy. But apart from the third house, Mercury naturally rules all those things that are related to the sixth house as well, because Mercury rules the signs of Gemini, which is a dual sign, right? Who likes to communicate, gather, and exchange information. And Virgo is not so much about communication and exchange. Virgo is more about the intellect and analysis, calculation, logic, details, contracts. Now, you know that originally sixth house and the sign of Virgo also have to do with those unpleasant everyday things that we need to do every day in order to maintain whatever we need to maintain in our life. Starting from your body, where you need to brush your teeth and where you need to, for example, exercise, put some clothes on, go to the office, type in report, come home, cook lunch, clean your bathroom, you know, all of that. Sixth house and naturally the sign of Virgo and Mercury also rules all those beings that we control. So you can find your subordinates, if you have any in that house, anyone who gives you any kind of service, like for example the cleaning service or some help that you may get in your house. This is why in the past this was the house of servants, right? We don't have servants anymore, but we have people who we pay to help us around the house. And even your pets, because your pets are the beings that you control, right? So although there are many planets that can be connected to pets, depending on what kind of animal it is, and we most often have dogs, which are ruled by K2, and cats, which are ruled by Rahu, but Mercury also signifies all the pets because this is the natural karaka for the sixth house. Now here you can see in pictures all the Mercury ruled stuff which can be affected during Mercury retrograde. I think that when we look at the things visually, it helps to remember them, you know? You remember the picture, and then when something happens, the brain will kind of connect the picture to what we talked about here. So you can see all means of transport here. Now, generally, air traveling is not ruled by Mercury or the third house. You can see this plane in the left corner. And all these vehicles like a car or a boat, if you want to look at them, you will look at them through the fourth house in the sense of conveniences. But if we talk about the transport or delivery or the process of traveling, whether this is the third house short traveling where you can use the car or bus or train or whatever, or this is a long distance overseas traveling where you have to go by plane or by boat, there is a certain process where you have to plan your trip, schedule, buy a ticket, stuff like that, deal with documents, deal with planning. All of this is ruled by Mercury. All people who are in news, advertising, marketing, sales, 90% of today's vocations are also ruled by Mercury. Whatever has to do with communication, computer, typing things, analyzing things, planning things, you know, most office jobs have to do with Mercury. Also, the things that you do with your hands, because Mercury rules hands, the third house, right? Like, so for example, knitting. You can even see some creative things like painting, for example, from the third house or where Mercury is involved, because you have to use your hands for that. You can even see Mercury or the third house involved in some sports like basketball or handball, where you have to use your hands, okay? All of those Gmails, Yahoo mails, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, WhatsApp, Viber, YouTube, all of that is connected to Mercury and ruled to Mercury. By Mercury. Okay. Now, as I said, generally, if we talk about the brain, energies of Mercury are related to your logical brain and mental processes which have to do with logical reasoning, exchange of information, facts, search for knowledge, learning processes. And therefore, you can see here in this picture that they divided brain in this picture to the left brain and the right brain. Now, as the science progresses, there are many questions which have been raised on whether we can actually divide the brain this way in two halves. I don't want to get into this here, but let's say for the purposes of this video that we imagine that this is this kind of division. Maybe in reality, if you look at the brain and where all of these processes are located, this is not such a strict division. But for the purposes of understanding what our left brain rules and what the right brain rules, this is a very useful division. So normally, Mercury is related to the third house and all those processes which we spoke about. And then when Mercury goes retrograde, its energies become much more like the 12th house. And you become very creative. Other parts of your nervous system are activated when mercurial energy is so strong and doesn't go through the sun rays. Then when its energies go through the purification process of the sun rays. So when there is no sun rays, this concentrated energy activates different parts of our nervous system, meaning we who are like receptors, and we are really small bundles of energy in 3D form if compared to the planets and their energies. We're so tiny and insignificant that it's hilarious. And when Mercury retrograde is happening, this is activating or we are responding to its energies by seeing things from another perspective, our right brain perspective, which is more intuitive, creative, which has to do with emotional perception of things, and it's not so logical. It's more foggy, and it operates by being led by a feeling. Okay? So Mercury retrograde is extremely useful because you will gain the perspective on whatever is happening in your life from another point of view. And actually, if you look at your life, or my life, whose ever life, this is just the sum of our actions and decisions that we made based on our perception, which is Maya and illusion. But this is what governs us, right? So during Mercury retrograde, you get the chance to look at things from a different perspective. When you integrate both perspectives, none of them is right or wrong. This is just your perception. It's not good or bad, right or wrong, but it will lead you towards making some decisions and performing some actions. When you combine them, you will have the fuller and, more neutral, detached picture. So I guess you will be able to make more beneficial decisions. Now, this is what any Mercury retrograde cycle looks like. The planet will cross over the same degrees for 3 times. The first thing that you can feel, if you are just a bit more sensitive, you can undoubtedly feel it, is when Mercury enters the shadow. This is the day when somebody will call you, something will emerge, somebody will ask things of you, you will get some kind of news. Something is going to happen on that day which is going to tell you about the direction of the whole cycle. And you can feel it, even if you don't know the date. And you are a bit more sensitive, this is the date when suddenly communication and human interactions speed up. After that, Mercury goes into a certain direction and maybe meets some planets along the way, or receives some aspects along the way, or gives some aspects along the way, which will color its travel. And then it hits the point where it turns retrograde. We call this stationary, and we call this first period shadow or shadow zone. And you're always going to feel the fuzz during the shadow zone. Things get hectic, maybe plans are late, people make mistakes, there is a lot of information missing in the shadow zone, and there is a lot of tries to do something, and then either it doesn't work out or it doesn't give you the expected results, but anyhow you are going in a certain direction. Major rule for Mercury retrograde: don't get attached to this direction and goal. Just don't get attached to this direction, because this is about to change. So whatever you do, if you're involved in a project or you have some tasks or you're planning something, okay, go along the way. You're missing certain information, and not only you, people around you are missing information. Everybody's missing information, so nothing can be completed properly. Just don't get attached to this direction and goal, and there will be no problem when Mercury turns retrograde and all of this shifts and you start moving in a completely different direction, crossing the same degrees, gaining the perspective from the other side, integrating along the way until Mercury becomes stationary again, and it will become stationary at the same exact degree where it entered the shadow zone. It will become stationary. Mercury's energies are the strongest while it is stationary and turning, both when it is stationary towards becoming retrograde and when it's stationary towards becoming direct. These are the days when there will be most hectic communication and most of those mercurial misunderstandings and changes in plans, right? So along the Mercury retrograde, you are using your emotional, creative, intuitive side of the brain to gain a different perspective on something, integrating the missing information along the way. Now, maybe Mercury again meets some planets along the way, which will color its journey. Maybe he receives or gives some aspects along the way, which will cover its journey. But this is still the process of learning, collecting information, gaining a different perspective, and integrating. The moment Mercury turns from retrograde to direct, most of the information is now integrated, and you can proceed with action and resolve the whole situation until Mercury hits the point where it turned retrograde. After that, Mercury is out of shadow zone, and one story in your life is, well, completed. Now, when we want to analyze any transit, including Mercury, we will look at first what this planet is a natural karaka or significator of, to give some general predictions, and then you have to look at your specific chart to see what Mercury rules and which house he's going to be transiting through. Now, this has to do, the thing that I'm going to talk about is has to do with things that Mercury is a natural karaka of. So for any Mercury retrograde period, just any Mercury retrograde period, you should prepare, back up your files. If your phone is full or your computer is full, or you have noticed that, I don't know, there have been some issues and maybe you have a virus and your computer is working more slowly, or your phone its memory is getting full, clean that, back up your files before Mercury turns retrograde. Always do it before it hits the station. Take care of your money and documents, because Mercury rules pickpockets, among other things. As I've already said, don't get attached to your plan or goal during the shadow period. Always check the things you write before sending them or submitting them, because when you're operating on your intuitive, creative side of the brain, well, you know, there is no this strong logical analytical quality, and you have to pay extra attention to it. Whatever you plan some extra time for it. So for example, if you need 15 minutes to get from point A to point B, leave it to be 20, 25, especially during the stationary periods. Pay attention to what happens at stationary points, because that to a large extent determines what the whole retrograde is going to be about. Be ready for misunderstandings, because not only you are affected by this, each and every one of us is, and different people have different capacity to process this. So you will have to be ready for misunderstandings, or having to repeat or clarify things, or ask people to repeat or clarify things for you. There is a huge possibility that the old projects may be revived, or people from the past may appear, because retrograde also rules past. Being connected to the 12th house and the right brain activities, Mercury retrograde generally is great for doing something creative. And as I've already said, the whole point of this cycle is for us to use our intuitive or creative or emotional perception to gain an understanding of events from a different perspective, and then integrate it, and then have both logical and emotional perception, after which we can proceed. Now, apart from this, how do you determine the effects of Mercury retrograde in your chart? So first of all, bear in mind all the things that Mercury is the Karaka for. This is, as we said, everything related to the signs of Gemini and Virgo in 3rd and 6th house. Look at the house where in your chart this is happening. Look at which houses Mercury rules in your chart. Then look at which sign the Mercury will be transiting. If you know something about nakshatras, pay attention to nakshatras as well, because they narrow down the possibilities. And then look at which planet rules the sign where Mercury goes retrograde, because that planet is the boss of this house, and Mercury will behave by the rules that this planet sets. So where is this planet placed now, and what is it doing? Now, since I'm doing this in December 2016, the next Mercury retrograde that we are having is in Sagittarius, meaning we have to look where Jupiter, who rules Sagittarius, is and what he's doing. Great news, Jupiter is in Virgo. Virgo is ruled by Mercury. Mercury is in Sagittarius. Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. So they're not going to harm each other's houses. They will be supporting each other. But I will talk about that in a separate video these days. And this is something that I wanted to give you for any retrograde that may come, independent on whether someone does a particular video for that particular retrograde. So I hope you will find this useful, and well, do something useful with your Mercury retrograde and be well prepared. And if you would like to see more of these videos, you can subscribe at the button below, or visit my astrology page on Facebook, for which there is a link in the description box. Until my next video, thank you for listening, and see you soon. Bye bye.